So
Mm.
that was big. All right. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, depending on when and where you're watching this Facebook live. Happy Valentine's Day to all of you who are watching. Whether you're in a relationship or not, I hope you feel the love because you are loved. Um, and this is the voice and the face of Dr. Tolula Binton, CEO and co-founder of Living Spring Family Medical Center here in the awesome city of Mansfield, Texas, where we believe in helping our patients live long and well because we believe the quality of life is just as important as the quantity of life. I'm excited today because we have a repeat guest, my sister, my friend, and awesome sleep doctor, Dr. Funke Afolabi-Brown. I guess what we're going to be talking about, we'll be talking about Doc. I want to sleep, but my mind won't shut up. Help me.
Mm.
Dr. Funke, thank you so much for coming. How are you?
Thank you. It's always so good to see you, my dear friend. Happy Valentine's Day to you too.
Thank you, my dear. Thank you. Now, before I have you kind of tell us what you do, I want to introduce you. This lady, as down to earth as she appears, is a big shot. She's triple board certified, a sleep medicine doctor. She's also obviously she's a physician, and she's very passionate about helping people discover the gift of sleep as a superpower. She's a speaker. She's a coach. She's an educator. She's a writer, and she is the founder of Restful Sleep MD, where she helps busy professional women and their children prioritize sleep to help their optimal health and thrive and live to their fullest potential. I love one of the things I love about this nice young lady is that she also helps both the woman and the children, because if one doesn't, if the child's not sleeping, the woman also is affected. So other things about her: she is a member of the American Academy of Sleep Medicine, the American Academy of Pediatrics, and the American Thoracic Society. She's also on the medical advisory board of Baby Center and the expert advisory board of Project Sleep. She's a frequent speaker at conferences, at summits, at workshops. She's all over the globe, and she has chosen to come spend time with us this evening to answer questions. I am honored, Doc. Thank you so much for what you do.
Thank you so much. And thank you for that very kind introduction.
I didn't even finish. I just did.
No, it's okay.
I did the summary just to save time.
Not
But
to help. I have to shorten it.
Here's my first question to you. Why do you do what you do? Why do you do what you do?
Well, you know what? I have been there, right? So like you said, I've lived a busy life so far. And it came at a cost initially. It came at the cost of my sleep, my well-being, right? I
Mm,
didn't put that as a priority. Like most women, most high achieving women, it's like we have a hard time balancing it. It's like you have to sacrifice something to achieve something else. And so for me, that was the same, right? From training. I was exhausted. I had sleep deprivation, chronic sleep deprivation, like most people, right?
mm,
And but for me, I was super sensitive to sleep. And so it was over time I realized like I'm working 4 or 5 times as hard to get the same results as some of my colleagues. And then,
wow.
fast forward, I got through training and then kids came and life happened. And yet I'm still a doctor, right? So I'm doctoring and helping people and solving problems during the day. And then
Mm,
at night, I'm up all night keeping, trying to get my kids to sleep. And so, on top of all that, as if it wasn't hard enough, I had a loss in my family too. And so that, added on insomnia and a lot of like heaviness. And so, all that just, it was hard. It was a hard road. But, over time, I started to kind of untangle the mess,
right.
which was called for me. And then, that really motivated me to pursue training in sleep medicine and, going in there first to understand this for myself, and then now understanding how powerful this was and how much it has pretty much changed my life and the way I see things, right? I see things
Mm.
differently, I prioritize things differently. And so it's now my mission, right? After going through that and understanding the science and seeing how sleep impacts everybody and impacts our lives in general, I've made it a mission to help others see the same.
And I love how, and of course I've been following you. I listen to you. Is how you normalize sleep as a woman, you having enough sleep is not a bad thing. It's necessary. You know, you're not a bad mom if you don't not sleep. And it's you know, mindset shift, mindset shift. And I'm hoping that we do quite a bit today as we talk to working professional women to see sleep as actually something they can use as a superpower. Less arguments with better sleep, less crankiness with better sleep, better relationship with better sleep. But let me stop talking. All right, so let's talk sleep. It's one of the underrated superpowers. Why is sleep important? For it's an obvious question, but let's delve. Why is
Yeah.
sleep important, Doc?
One thing I say again and again is it's just not something we do as a cure for sleepiness, right? It is true medicine,
Mm,
just based on all the benefits we get from sleeping well, right? Every single part of our system, from the top of your head all the way to your tippy toes, like one way or the other, sleep impacts it. And so, even when we start from up top, from just your brain function and the ability of your brain to really take on that cleansing role. So studies have shown that it just when you're able to get into sleep is when your brain, there's fluid that kind of covers your brain. It's called cerebrospinal fluid. It's essentially has this function that helps to sort of wash toxic products that are built up over the course of the day. And some of those products or waste products, some of those products have been associated with conditions like Alzheimer's down the line. So this is really, really important work. So when we don't sleep well, we're losing that benefit. And then, in terms of just even our mood and our executive function, right? Our alertness, our ability to remember stuff,
mm,
to make the right decisions, all those things are dependent on good sleep. And then even with our physical health, right? You see your patients in clinic, and I'm sure you hear that. I'm sure that's one of the questions you ask. Are you sleeping
right.
well, right?
Yep.
High blood pressure, higher risk of heart attacks, increased risk of strokes, increased risk of obesity, of diabetes. You can have just even your immune function itself can get affected by
Mm,
sleep or not sleeping well. And so you're more susceptible to catch a cold when you don't sleep well. And even when you give immunizations and your immune system is sort of not where it should be, your response to those immunizations is impacted by sleep.
mm.
And then, even when we move forward to things like anxiety and depression and other mood disorders, unfortunately, even increased risk of suicide has been associated. I mean, a lot of these are sort of what we call bi-directional relationships, right? But then you can tell that it impacts everything pretty much.
A lot of things. I'm seeing the the pillars of health when you talk to lifestyle
Hmm.
medicine. Sleep is one.
Hmm.
Just as exercise is important,
Yeah.
and eating healthy is important. Good sleep is important and actually preventive. And I like how you describe the CSF, the cerebrospinal fluid, as a fluid that bathes the brain actually and rids it of toxins, and that's important during sleep.
Hmm.
So I think understanding why it's important is important for people to know that okay, this is something I should prioritize.
Yeah.
I'm taking notes. I'm taking notes. All right. So next question. So I have a client who comes and says, "Doc, I want to sleep, but my mind keeps staying up. Why? Why do you think that is? Like, what's up?"
Yeah. So that's the big question. I hear that a lot, especially with women. There's a lot of things to unpack there, right? To start off with, sometimes your mind might just be racing over a period of time, right? If you're under stress, if you have a stressful period, a big change in your life, the kids are sick, there's financial issues, there's a loss, you might have that brief period, or you're anxious about something, right? That can happen. And so during those times, we sort of sometimes when it becomes really pervasive and it's persistent, then we start to get into what you call insomnia. I think if you have a brief period of like not sleeping well because your mind is racing and you get through it, you push through like most people do,
Mm,
that's fine. It happens. We all have 1 or 2 nights of not good sleep. But if this is something that's now persistent, where you get to the point that you're exhausted, right? And that's very common. You're exhausted, then you get into bed, and as soon as your head hits the pillow, it's like a light switch comes on. And so, what I just described is what we call increased cognitive arousal. So, your brain has started to associate your bed with oh my gosh, am I going to sleep? You start to feel anxious, and you may start to feel frustrated. And so it gets into this whole spiral. There's a fancy word for what we call that when it's going on for a while. And what we call it is psychophysiologic insomnia. And so it's that increased racing, increased cognitive arousal that we have that's associated with the bed. And it's really because we're under, we're persistently under a lot of stress. And now we've started to associate our bed with a place of worry and things like
Mm.
that. So here are a few things that I recommend doing. I think one is to take and evaluate yourself and the situation. Like, is this something that's been going on for a while? Is there stress in my life? Is there something going on? And of course, there are lots of things that are out of our control. There's
Mm.
some things that are within our control, right? If you notice that every time I hang out with a certain individual or a certain group of people, my mind is racing. Like, you know what? You got to deal with. If that individual is within your household, then it's a whole different story, right? But I think, of course, what I'm saying is, if it's underlying chronic stress, then finding ways to try to deal with it or manage it would be important. And the reason why I start with that is one of the things I say is restful sleep habits start from during the day. You can't go through a day where you're just jam packed, you're overwhelmed, you're stressed out, you don't have a moment to process anything, and then you get into bed and expect sleep to come. Sometimes you need to be able to set things in place that will help lead up to good sleep. Now, when we're looking at mind racing, a few things that I then start to think about. One is we want to make sure that you're not giving yourself too much opportunity to worry in bed. So if you notice that, oh, yes, I'm tired, typically my bedtime is maybe 10 p.m. And if because when I go to bed at 10 p.m., I don't fall asleep right away. I'm going to try to go to bed a little bit earlier because I'm exhausted. So I'm going to go to bed at 9 p.m., for instance. And so now you've given yourself much longer time to be in bed to give your mind the opportunity to rest. So what I recommend is go to bed when you're feeling sleepy, right? Go to bed when you're feeling sleepy. And I think that then decreases that opportunity. We call that in the sleep world, we call it stimulus control. So you're really waiting to go to bed. You're really trying to associate your bed
Mm.
with sleep because our brain makes all kinds of random associations. So if you're in bed and your brain already knows every time I get into bed, I'm always worrying, then
Mm.
it's like you have to sort of unlearn that, right? You have to sort of unlearn that. So try to limit the time you spend in bed just awake with your mind racing. And
Mm.
probably what that would look like, apart from, not just going to bed and spending the whole day in bed. Another way you can do that is if you've been in bed and you start to notice that mind racing, you notice you're in that spiral. And most of us do, where like you start to feel frustration rising, you start to catastrophize about your day. Just stop trying, get out of bed. You're already laying in bed, and then those thoughts start to rise. You realize you're still processing so many things, and it's really leading to a lot of frustration. I recommend getting out of your bed, sitting somewhere, maybe journaling, maybe praying, maybe doing some other activity that's very calming and relaxing for you. So
Mm.
that's very, very helpful in terms of breaking that association that your brain has with staying awake and ruminating in bed. So that's the first, I think, really important. And I think it's a little hard because especially when you're someone who wants to, you're exhausted, right? Your body is tired, but your brain is awake. So we call it like you're tired, but you're wired. So it may be hard, but it's something that will help you on the long run.
Mm.
The second thing that I recommend doing is actually creating a buffer zone. So maybe that's a little bit related to some of the stuff that I talked about during the day, right? And what is that buffer zone? A buffer zone is just having a system or some space in your day, maybe in the evening, close to, maybe as part of your routine, where you can sort kind of unwind, right? So you can sit either with a journal and write things you're thankful for. You can write, process through things that may be lurking in your mind. If you're worrying about something, write it like a question and say, okay, these are the things I'm worrying about. What are the next steps I can take? So give your brain something to say, okay, you know what? We may not be able to solve all the problems, but these are some steps I can take tomorrow morning regarding this issue. So essentially, you're doing kind of like a brain dump.
Mm.
And, in addition to that buffer zone, you're also having some kind of calming, activities. For some, it might be mindfulness and things like that. So really, that buffer zone is very helpful. And then, the third one is a little bit related to the buffer zone, but you can decide to split it up or do it together if you want. And that is having some kind of processing strategy, right? For many women who are either, professional or high achievers or moms, we carry a lot of stuff. And we don't want to bother other people, right? We're solving everybody else's problems. We don't feel like we don't want to bother anybody. So we're processing a lot on our own, and we don't have the time to even process that. So figuring out how you can develop those processing strategies. For me, it's finding community, talking to people if you need to, again, journaling if some of that work is stuff you need to do on your own. Some people call it a worry journal. I just call it a journal. Just whatever it is that's going on in your mind that that may potentially contribute to you having sleep difficulties. Just put it down on paper. And there's something magical that happens when you take stuff that seems to be lurking in the recesses of your
Mhm.
mind and putting it on. It's you're just like, wait, is this it? Otherwise it looks like this big monster in your mind. So having those processing strategies is very helpful. And then finally, making sure you also have some relaxation strategies in place. So what does that look like? It may be breath work, it may be, some kind of mindfulness activity, it may be, reading your Bible, it may be, soaking in a bath, stuff
Mm.
like that to kind of relax you, is very important. So those would be my top four um, recommendations in what you could do with that mind racing at night. It is very common, but it's something we can work on.
So it's not unique to you. For
Mhm.
those of you who are watching live or every play hashtag, they're not unique to you, but there are strategies that you could practice over and over again to almost
Mhm.
reset. And I like how you mentioned that you should plan during the day to have a almost like a de-stressing time.
Mhm.
You can't just keep going, 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 and then expect bedtime you just plop and fall asleep. So
Yeah.
having some kind of brief reset in between the day is also important.
Mhm.
What would you say during the day? How many minutes? Is there a timeline, or you feel like like is there a timeline? What would you say?
That's a great question. And most people, and I think that's also gets in our way of doing this, especially as women who you want to get it right. So you're like, oh, you want me to do mindfulness? I have to make it perfect. And so there's just that performance, expectation we put on ourselves. Literally, what this looks like is if you feel like you've been sitting, say, in front of a computer screen, or you've been engaged in an activity for maybe like an hour and a half, and
Right.
you start to feel that almost the feeling of overwhelm. All that looks like for you, depending on where you are. It could be just 2 minutes of looking away, focusing on something else. It could be whatever you have. It could be 2 minutes of quick jumping jacks just to get blood circulating. It could be, taking a walk up and down the stairs for a little bit, but just really just breaking that constant cycle.
Mhm.
It's really
Mm.
what it is. It could be 2 to 5 minutes of just breathing, just being in the present moment. You know what I mean? So again, it's essentially what you're just doing is you're bringing yourself to a state of awareness. Like, okay, because sometimes we're just going and performing at such a high level
Yep.
that and then it all just comes to us when we're about to sleep. So having those breaks from time to time, and you may need to set a reminder. um the Apple Watch, for most people, if you have one, really will tell you it's time to get up, so take advantage of that. I think
That's a
that's
good.
like every hour.
That's a good one. And I like, one of the things I try to do, and I'm realizing as I'm talking to you, that it's something I should practice too. Because of course, as I'm sitting here, I'm also, working on these strategies. Just staring
Mm,
out the window, thinking, looking away from the screen and just staring out the window and
mhm,
just it's
mm,
actually it's brief, but it's also relaxing.
mm,
So being intentional about it. And it's nothing magical. It
Mm,
sounds simple, but
mm.
do it. Those little bursts of relief make it easier to sleep at night.
Yeah.
Um, Now, of course, these are medical suggestions. We do recommend that you schedule a time. You get to meet with someone like Dr. Funke to have these one-on-one conversations and have a customized sleep advice for you, and to rule out or tease out any other causes. But
Mm,
Doc, one more question for you before we go. What are other common tips you give your clients to
mm,
help optimize their sleep? Like the common ones you see. I know you talked about de-stress, and I know you talked about
mm.
practicing relaxing techniques. You talked about brain dump. Are there any other tips you'd have for someone who's like, I'm watching you. Yes, all of this sounds nice, but I don't know if I can do them. I don't really like music. I don't like reading. And what bath? I don't like the soak.
A shower, a shower is good.
Okay.
All right. So for that, really, I came up with a framework because yes, if you look at the if you look on Google, right, Dr. Google has all sorts of recommendations that could get overwhelming, and some of them are not necessarily written by people who are sleep experts. Some of them are written from people's personal opinions, but
Mm, mm,
I usually use this framework. It's called Create Restful Sleep Habits. So it's Create, CREATE. And the reason why I like it is evidence based and it's practical. And I usually will give you some rationale behind it. So the
mm,
first is consistency, especially when you're someone who has had a hard time with falling asleep at night. There may be that natural tendency to want to just sleep in, right? Because you're like, I'm exhausted, let me sleep in. But what that does is that it kind of just shifts our circadian rhythm or the internal clock that really trains our brain to know when to get up and when to go to sleep. So try to maintain a consistent sleep time and a consistent wake time. Even if you've had a rough night, I promise you, you've had plenty rough nights and you've been okay. They will be fine, right? And you will build the sleep pressure to be able to sleep better the next day. But try to maintain that consistency. And that may involve setting boundaries, right? The B word, I said it. um, the next is having a routine. And yes, so some of the things I talked about around the routine. And what is a routine? They're just rituals or habits that we're used to that cues our body to sleep. So things like, a bath I feel is good, especially if you have a sweaty day, right? You probably want to get that grime off. And also it's beneficial because it helps drop your core body temperature, and that drop
mm,
what also helps us with good sleep. So a shower is good, keep it nice and warm, and it's very helpful. Reading a book that you like, avoiding social media or things that could be very jarring, or the news or things like that could be very
mm,
stimulating for you. It could be, reading, like I said, it could be, speaking with your loved ones. It could be just finding a combination of things that just really gets you ready for sleep. And then the E is environment. So it's very helpful if your room temperature is cool, if your room itself is nice and dark, because what that does is it helps promote good sleep because it helps you with the melatonin production that our brain needs. And also, you want to just limit the noise in the background as well, because that also can affect your sleep. And then A is assign the and sleep only in bed. And the reason why I bring that up is we use the bed for all kinds of things nowadays, right? We use the bed to worry, we use the bed
mm,
to play video games, watch TV, get on our phones, bring in our laptops. So really trying to limit non-bed activities
mm.
out of the bedroom is very important. Again, you're training your brain. You're sort of training it to know what it's supposed to do when it gets in. And then T is technology. So we all know that's a whole show on its own, right? Keep the phone, try to keep it as, limit phone use about 30 to 60 minutes as much as possible. But hey, if you don't think it bothers you, whatever, do what works for you. My thought is if your mind is racing, it might be related to the content you saw just before you went to sleep. Maybe that email or that list of things you're supposed to do. So you really want to minimize technology use around bedtime. And then the final E is, you want to avoid any like heavy meals. You want to avoid caffeine because all those things disrupt the sleep quality you get. You want to avoid drinking alcohol before bed. And so if you follow that, I mean, you could just start with one because that sounds like, oh my gosh, I
Mhm.
just listed out 6 things. But if all you say is, you know what, I'm going to start with one, I'm going to just be consistent at the time I go to bed and the time I wake up. Just work on that for like a week, and then you can start to build on the others as you're ready.
This is beautiful. So pick one, run with it, and remain
Mhm.
consistent and be encouraged. Because these changes actually make for better sleep, better
Mhm.
focus, and better effectiveness, and more, be more efficient. I can
Mhm.
attest to that. Um, I think it was a couple of weeks ago, actually a couple of months ago. Went home. I left my computer, did everything. Went home, rested. Oh my god! The next day, I felt like Superwoman. The energy levels. I was like, I should do this more often. Like, actually get good quality of sleep. And someone
Yeah.
said something to me. I don't know if it was you. Yeah, it was you. The amount of time I think I'm wasting sleeping,
Mm.
like you make up like the amount of time wasted actually when you don't sleep well. By the time you get good sleep, you're even much more efficient.
Yeah.
So test it out. What did they
Yeah.
say? 3 weeks to establish a new habit.
Mhm.
Test it out 3 weeks. Let's try it.
Yeah.
Let's make sleep one of our superpowers and use it to our benefit.
Mm. Mm. I love it. I love it. That is so true.
I mean, work in progress though. So let me not sit here like a hypocrite. Yeah, we're working towards it. So I'm
We
let
all we all are. We all are.
Yes, we are. So, doc, I have people who are watching who are like, man, I like this doctor. I wanted to come speak. I see she's a speaker. She's an advocate. She goes on summits. And yeah, I would like her to come speak on one of my platforms. Or I would like to connect with her. Doc, where can people find you?
Absolutely. As always, it's such a joy talking with you. I just I love our chat.
Thank
I'm on
you.
I'm on the social media. So I'm on Facebook as Funke Afolabi-Brown. And then I'm on Instagram as RestfulSleepMD. And then also you can find me on my website, restfulsleepmd.com. If you have questions, if you're someone, I mean, like you said, it sounds like we've covered a lot, but we've barely scratched the surface. And everyone's individual sleep needs will change. So if you are a woman, a mom who is doing all the things, but sleep just seems to elude you. You've tried all kinds of things and you want us to really delve into this, then you could definitely contact me either through, social media or through my website, restfulsleepmd.com.
And we've put down the information, your YouTube channel, because you didn't say that one. There's YouTube, there's
Yes,
Instagram, it's all over the social media, like she says it. So
I'm
that
there.
information
Yes.
has been put here. And so this has been very good. Thank you so much. Very informative. For those of you who are watching live, please tag your friends, share forward, simply forward this live to them, especially for people who are struggling with sleep issues. These can help. I want to give a special shout out. I see Dr. Yinka Dosumushi joined. Thank you for joining. Appreciate you and appreciate your feedback. The rest of you, I apologize. I can't see because you didn't make any comments. So next time you can make comments and that way I can shout you out. But thank you all for watching. Thank you so much, Doc, for coming. I really appreciate you.
Thank you. Good seeing you. Bye,
All
everyone.
right, everyone. You have a good one. And if you or anyone you know is looking for an awesome, a thorough, and passionate family physician in the Mansfield, Texas area who will have conversations to help you even with sleep, I'm she. Have a good one.